Before Frida became the woman with flowers in her hair, before the fame, before the Tijuana dresses, before Diego Rivera, there was a girl lying in bed, trapped inside Plaster. Her body had survived the bus accident, but survival was not the same as healing. A year after the crash, Frida's pain returned, and doctors discovered that 3 vertebrae were out of place. As a result, she was placed in plaster corsets. Her right foot needed special support, and according to Frida, the doctors had missed something essential from the very beginning. And so, she wrote, no one paid any attention, and so they didn't take x-rays as they should have. In today's episode, we covered Chapter 5 of Hayden Herrera's book, Frida, a Biography of Frida Kahlo, where we take a closer look at Frida's painful recovery, at Frida's heartache as her first love drifts further away from her, both figuratively and literally, and at Frida's strength as she manages her pain while consoling the ones she loves. And we'll also talk about how Frida Kahlo, confined to a bed, began to create the subject she would return to again and again, herself, because it was, after all, the subject she knew best. Hi everyone, I'm Jessica Gonzalez-Gibson, the leading lady of Kaleidoscopes and Polka Dots, where I sell and share my handmade vintage-inspired jewelry that honors Hispanic American heritage. I will continue to say this because I think it's apropos, but Frida is my biggest muse, my biggest source of inspiration, and that is why I am dedicating so much time to this series. A lot of the information that we're going to cover today we've kind of talked about previously, kind of, sort of. I mean, I have edited chapter 4 so many times. I feel like a lot of this is repetitive, but this is, in my opinion, Aiden's way of really reiterating how incredibly challenging Frida's recovery was and how deeply she felt everything for her loved ones, for herself. And I mean, the physical pain was just so exorbitant, so unimaginable. Of course, a second chapter has to be created to emphasize this point. If you've stumbled upon my channel for the first time, welcome. I hope you stay. I hope you subscribe. I hope you share, like. I hope you do all the things. And most importantly, I hope you stick around. Oh, and go check out the other episodes. I love creating these videos. I have a whole slew of shorts if you are not as big into long form videos. Per usual, I will clip this video to cater to anybody who prefers shorter content. So I hope you stick around. All right, let's get started. Frida Kahlo after the accident. Pain, painting, and the broken column. After the accident of 1925, Frida Kahlo's life began a long negotiation with pain. Her friend Olga Campos, who had access to Frida's medical records, said Frida underwent at least 32 surgical operations, most of them on her spine and right foot. Another friend, the writer Andres Enestrosa, described her life in 3 haunting words. She loved dying. This is a phrase that projects the unimaginable pain that she endured daily. It captures the strange cruelty of Frida's survival. She had escaped death, but she had not escaped the accident. The impact followed her everywhere, into her bedroom, into her clothes, her letters, her art, and eventually into the image that most people carry of her today, the archetype of a strong, unyielding woman. Her first major relapse is described in her letter to Alejandro Gómez Arias, dated September of 1926, about a year after the accident. A bone surgeon discovered that 3 of her vertebrae were out of place, and as a result, Frida had to wear plaster corsets that kept her immobilized for months, along with a special apparatus on her right foot. This was the result of neglect on the part of the Red Cross hospital doctors, who found her condition to be well enough to go home just a month after her accident. Of this, Frida wrote to Alejandro, "No one paid any attention to me. What's more, they did not take x-rays." Her letters reveal that certain necessary medical treatments were not performed before being discharged, given that her family could not afford to pay them. When they could afford them, the treatments were often ineffective. Of this she wrote, The second plaster corset that they put on me doesn't work anymore. And for that, they threw almost 100 into the street, since they gave the pesos to a pair of thieves, which is what most doctors are. After polio, Frida had fought for movement. She exercised. She strengthened herself. She became active, athletic, and bold. But after the bus accident, healing demanded the opposite, to sit still. And that stillness became its own kind of prison for a woman whose mischievous spirit demanded movement. How Frida Kahlo's dream of becoming a doctor helped her become a painter. So before the accident, Frida had not planned to become a painter. She wanted to study medicine. That detail matters because it changes the way we understand Frida's art. Frida did not simply paint pain because she felt it, although that's a big part of it. She painted the body with the mind of somebody who had once wanted to understand anatomy, illness, and repair. She even briefly considered making scientific drawings for medical books. In preparation, she studied biological tissue through a microscope and practiced drawing what she saw. But her path changed. Lying in bed, unable to sit up, and surrounded by the slow hours of illness, Frida reached for her paints. Or her father's paints. Years later, she would explain it plainly. She said that while she was in bed with a plaster cast, she was bored, and so she took her father's oil paints, which he handed over reluctantly, Frida said in another part. Her mother helped by ordering a special easel that could easily be attached to her bed. And as Frida put it, I began to paint. There is something almost casual and attainable in the way that Frida spoke about her artistic journey. Following her success, she was careful not to promote the familiar artist's myth of being born with a pencil in hand, or to imply that innate genius had drawn her irresistibly to art from the age of 3. Instead, she was just a young woman in bed, with time pressing heavily on her, reaching for color because the world had become too narrow and dark. And yet, from that narrow room, she opened a door to her artistic journey. Frida Kahlo's early paintings, how Frida began painting after her accident. So Frida's first subjects were close friends and family members. She painted her cuates from the Cachuchas, her friends from Coyoacan, and she painted her sister Adriana. And of course, most importantly, she painted the subject she knew best, herself. However, these early works were not yet the Frida paintings that we recognize today. They are described as featuring dark tones, stiff drawing, awkward depictions of space, and underdeveloped technique. And several of these early canvases show a primitive version of Cubism, which I absolutely love. As an example of Cubism is the Cachuchas painting of 1927 and La Adelita, Pancho Villa, and Frida of 1927 as well. In this painting, space is tipped up and divided into facet-like compartments. While primitive, they were very ambitious. They were intimate, and they already carried hints of the artist she would become. Later, Frida would draw great inspiration from the Italian Renaissance painters, especially Botticelli, whom she mentioned several times in letters, and who inspired the nickname of her first self-portrait, which had the nickname of Your Botticelli. She also drew inspiration from Bronzino's portrait of Eleonora de Toledo. It's evident in her first self-portrait, where Frida mimics the woman's aristocratic poise. As mentioned in previous episodes, Frida's first self-portrait was especially important. It was not only an exercise in painting, it was an offering. Like many of her later self-portraits, it functioned almost like a talisman, an object charged with longing and love. Frida painted herself, poured her spirit and love into her work as a way of connecting to someone, especially as they began to drift away. Such was the case with her first self-portrait, who she gifted to Alejandro Gómez Arias. Frida Kahlo and Alejandro Gómez Arias, love, distance, and pain. Frida's letter to Alejandro from 1926 to 1927 are full of contradiction. They are witty and wounded. They're playful and desperate, romantic and afraid. Again and again, Frida writes from a place of physical pain, but beneath that pain is another fear, the fear of being forgotten. On January 10th, 1927, she wrote to Alejandro, "Alex, I want you to come. You don't know how I have needed you these days, and how each day I love you more. I'm still sick, and you know how boring that is? I don't know what to do anymore since it has been more than a year that I've been this way, and I'm fed up with so much sickness, like an old woman. I don't know how I'll be when I'm 30. You'll have to carry me all wrapped up in cotton. Listen, tell me about your time in Oaxaca, and what kinds of terrific things you have seen, because I need to be told something new. Because I was born to be a flower pot, and I never leave the dining room. I'm very bored. Here she draws a weeping face. The line referencing the flower pot, while cute and fun, conveys unimaginable frustration. A flower pot is still. It's decorative. It doesn't travel, which was one of Frida's great ambitions. A flower pot waits in one place, while others come and go. Frida wanted the world. She wanted movement, conversation, adventure, and love. Instead, she had the dining room, the bed, the corset, and the slow discipline of endurance. Then, unexpectedly, Alejandro left for Europe in March. He claimed that he was going to go and assist his aunt after a surgery in Germany, and intended to be away for 4 months. In truth, his family hoped that the distance would soften the intensity of their relationship, as Frida had grown increasingly attached to him. Unfortunately, though, he did not say goodbye, not in person. Instead, he wrote from Veracruz, letting her know of his plan to assist his aunt to travel and to study German. Of course he did. He was such an ambitious young man. Alejandro's abrupt departure was devastating to Frida. She wrote to him on Sunday, March 27th, 1927. My Alex, you cannot imagine with what pleasure I waited for you on Saturday, because I was sure you would come, and that on Friday you had had something to do. At 4 in the afternoon, I received your letter from Veracruz. Imagine my sorrow. I don't know how to explain it to you. I don't want to torment you. I want to be strong, above all, to have as much faith as you. But I cannot console myself at all. And now I am afraid that just as you did not tell me when you were leaving, you are deceiving me when you tell me that you are only going to be away for 4 months. I cannot forget you, even 1 minute. You are everywhere, in all my things, above all in my room, and my books and my paintings. Not until today at 12 did I receive your first letter. Who knows when you will receive mine? And I am going to write to you twice a week, and you will tell me if they get to you, or to what address I can send them. Now since you left, I do nothing, not even read, because when you were with me, everything I did was for you. It was for you to know about it. But now I don't want to do anything. Nevertheless, I understand I should not be this way. On the contrary, I'm going to study as much as I can, and as soon as I feel better, I'm going to paint and do many things so that when you return, I will be a little improved. Clearly, Alejandro had become a part of what helped her endure pain and loneliness, and now he'd become a source of sorrow. Frida Kahlo's love letters after the accident, pain, distance, and the plaster corset. While Alejandro traveled through Europe, Frida remained at home, trapped in treatment, heartache, and loneliness. On Good Friday, she wrote to him again, describing not only the pain of her body, but the desperation of not hearing from him. April 22nd, 1927. My Alex. Alicia wrote me, but since March 28th, neither she nor anyone has had the least news of you. There is nothing comparable to the desperation of not knowing anything about you for a month. I continue to be sick, and I'm getting much thinner. And the doctor still is of the opinion that they should put the plaster corset on me for 3 or 4 months, since the one with fluting, although a little less bothersome than the corset, gives worse results since it is a thing of being in it for months. The patient grows attached to it, and it is more difficult to cure the sores than the sickness. With the corset, I'm going to suffer horribly, since it needs to be irremovable, and in order to put it on me, they are going to have to hang me from the head until it dries, because otherwise it will be completely useless, and by hanging me, they are going to make my spine stay as straight as possible, but for all that which is not even half. Can you imagine how I will be suffering? The old doctor says that the corset gives very good results when it is well fitted, but that still remains to be seen, and if not, let the devil take me. Everything is reduced to this. I have nothing new to tell you. I am bored with A of ay ay ay. My only hope is to see you. Write to me. And above all, love me. That last line is so small, but basically it carries the whole chapter. Because Frida was not only trying to survive pain, she was trying to deal with the absence of her first love, of her reality, and the uncertainty of her future. And again, she wrote to him on August 2nd, 1927, well after his return by date, as originally predicted. According to what you tell me, the Mediterranean is marvelously blue. Will I know it someday? I think not, because I have very bad luck. And my greatest desire for a long time has been to travel. The only thing that will remain to me is the melancholy of those who have read travel books. I'm not reading anything now. I don't want to. I don't study German, nor do I do anything other than think about you. I believe myself to be surely full of wisdom. Alejandro did return eventually. He returned in November of 1927. And of course, he did not forget about her. How could he? Her letters followed him across the ocean, carrying pain, humor, jealousy, and longing. However, when he returned, he became more involved in university life, and she in art, and eventually their relationship slowly diminished. Why Frida Kahlo could never paint her bus accident. Frida would eventually paint death. She poked fun at La Pelona, another name for death, the way a Catholic laughs at Catholicism, or a Jew makes Jewish jokes. Because death was her companion, it was her kin. Coquettishly, she defied her opponent. I tease and laugh at death, she liked to say, so that it won't get the better of me. She would paint wounded bodies. She would paint herself split open, pierced, doubled, rooted, bleeding, blooming, and broken. But she could not truly paint the accident itself. Years later, she said the accident was too complicated and too important to reduce into one clear image. Now, it's important to note that Frida's work, while quite impressive, was often very small in size. They were like little squares, so I can imagine that she wanted more, but couldn't. Given her body of work, it's striking that the event that changed her life seemed so grand, so challenging, so as to paint. However, there is an undated drawing in the collection of Diego Rivera's son-in-law. Its brusque, crude draftsmanship suggests the subject provoked so much distress that Frida could not control her line. Time and space are collapsed in a nightmare vision. Two vehicles collide. Injured victims are strewn on the ground. The Coyoacan house is there, and Frida appears twice. Once lying on a stretcher encased in bandages and a plaster cast, and a second time simply as a large, childlike head looking on, perhaps remembering a lost balero, a child's toy. It is less a record than a haunting, but if Frida could not paint the accident directly, she painted what the accident did to her. She painted its aftermath. She painted the body as a diary. She painted the wound as language, the body as evidence. The girl who once wanted to study medicine turned painting into a form of psychological surgery, and that is one of the most powerful ideas of the chapter. Frida could not repair her body with paint, but she could examine it, name it, stage it. She could control the image, even if she could not control the pain. Thus, she would say, I paint myself because I'm so often alone, because I'm the subject I know best. From the time of the accident, she explained, my obsession was to begin again, painting things just as I saw them with my own eyes and nothing more. Thus the accident changed my path. Many things prevented me from fulfilling the desires which everyone considers normal, and to me, nothing seemed more normal than to paint what had not been fulfilled. Laughing at death, Frida's close companion. In Mexico, many people later described Frida's survival as destiny. She did not die in the accident, they said, because she was meant to live through a long calvary of pain. Frida herself seemed to adapt a complicated relationship with fate, with suffering, and with death. Later in life, she dressed cardboard skeletons in her own clothes. She ordered a sugar skull with her name written on it. She joked with death as if it were an old rival sitting at a table. All of what she's describing are common practices when it comes to celebrating and honoring Day of the Dead, except you usually do this with people who have passed away, and it's a way of honoring them. In Frida's case, she is honoring her close encounter with death. I will do a separate video about Day of the Dead, and I think I already have something on my channel relating to Day of the Dead, so I'll have it linked somewhere. She once said, "I tease and laugh at death." That's not a denial. It was defiance. Frida understood that death had already come close, too close. It had brushed against her life and left its handprint. So she teased it. She dressed it up. She made it familiar. She made it theatrical. If death was going to follow her, she would not allow it to enter silently. She would give it costume, color, and a name. La Pelona, the bald one. Becoming old in an instant. One of the most haunting parts of the chapter is the way Frida describes the accident as a kind of sudden aging. Lola Alvarez Bravo, a close friend and photographer, believed that, in a sense, Frida did die in the accident. She explained the struggle of the two Fridas was in her always, the struggle between one dead Frida and one that was alive. After the accident came a rebirth. Her love for nature was renewed, the same as for animals, colors, and fruits, anything beautiful and positive around her. But Frida herself did not describe the change as a rebirth. A year after the accident, Frida wrote to Alejandro, "Why do you study so much? What secret are you looking for? Life will reveal it to you. I already know it all without reading or writing. A little while ago, not much more than a few days ago, I was a child who went about in a world of colors, of hard and tangible forms. Everything was mysterious and something was hidden. Guessing what it was a game for me. If you knew how terrible it is to know suddenly, as if a bolt of lightning elucidated the earth. Now, I live on a painful planet, transparent as ice. But it is as if I learned everything at once in seconds. My friends, my companions become women slowly. I became old in an instant, and everything today is bland and lucid. I know that nothing lies behind. If there were something, I would see it." Frida did not simply lose mobility. She lost the luxury of gradually growing up. Pain propelled her into adulthood before time would. And yet, publicly, Frida became known for her strength, wit, generosity, and vivaciousness. Aurora Reyes remembers that during her relapse, Frida acted happy and gave her heart so freely that people who came to console her left feeling consoled themselves. That is the Frida contradiction. The public Frida glowed, but privately she was broken and wept. Her mask had become part of her reality. Frida Kahlo's painting, The Broken Column. In 1944, many years after the accident, Frida painted one of her most unforgettable self-portraits, The Broken Column. By then, she had endured more surgeries, more treatments, more apparatuses, more pain. She was again confined in a medical support, echoing the immobilization she had experienced in 1927. In the painting, Frida stands alone against a barren landscape. Her body is split open. The broken column replaces her spine. Nails pierce her skin. A steel orthopedic corset holds her body together. Her face is calm, but tears fall from her eyes. This is not melodrama. It's control. Frida does not collapse. She presents herself. She lets us see the wound, but she refuses to surrender her dignity. The split in her torso resembles an earthquake fissure. The landscape behind her is cracked and empty, echoing the brokenness of her body. Far away, there is a strip of blue sea beneath a clear sky, a suggestion of possibility, but it's distant, almost unreachable. And that distance matters because the broken column is not only about pain. It's about isolation. The body is broken. The world is vast. Hope exists, but it's far away. Still, Frida stands. That is the tension. She is wounded, but upright. She's pierced, but composed. Broken, but looking directly at us. In summary, Chapter 5 begins with Frida in a body that will not heal. It moves through Frida's many plaster corsets, her heartache, her early paintings, and the unanswered letters that were sent across oceans. It shows us a young Frida who is bored, lonely, angry, frightened, yet fiercely determined. And by the end, we're presented with a woman who's wise beyond her years. Frida is no longer the girl to whom something terrible happened. She is becoming the woman who will decide how that terrible thing is seen. She might not have been able to paint the accident itself, Maybe it was too violent, too chaotic, too important. But she painted what came after. She painted the body that remained. She painted the loneliness. She painted the performance of strength. She painted the split between the Frida who died that day and the Frida who kept living. And that may be why the broken column still feels so powerful. It does not ask us to look away from suffering. It asks us to look directly at it, not as a spectacle, not as pity, but as witness. Frida Kahlo's body was broken many times, but through painting, she created a self that could not be reduced to injury. The corset held her body together. The brush helped hold the rest. And somewhere between the pain, the plaster, the letters, and the mirror, Frida began to give birth to herself as we know her today. And that is where chapter 5 leaves us, with Frida in fragments, yes, but also with Frida becoming the author of her own image, not healed, not untouched, but unmistakably present. Alright guys, that is it for me today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give me a big thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And until next time, I will talk to you again very, very soon. Don't forget to also subscribe to my newsletter so that you never miss an episode. That is also truly the best way to stay in touch with me. Anyway, I will see you again very soon.